LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the July 15th edition of LiberalViewer Monday Media Mixup. Thanks for joining me. There's been a whole lot of news, including Trump naming JD Vance as his vice presidential pick, which I'll be getting to with my second clip of the 10 most newsworthy clips I picked out from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States, for what should be really educational, informative, fair use media criticism and political commentary show for you all today. You can see the main topic, of course, the last 2 days, the main topic of all the news has been Trump wounded in assassination attempt. Happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, about 6 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday, and has been dominating the news coverage ever since, including the Sunday shows. It was a bad day, not really ripe for political comedy, but uh, I have a couple things that are kind of strange kind of comedy, not like, humorous. Well, I don't know. You can judge for yourself. First, I'm going to start with the way the strange discongruity in the way that this story broke on MSNBC on the Saturday show with Jonathan Capehart, because they were covering this Trump rally in Pennsylvania down in the little box. They were monitoring it in the little box down in the right corner, which led to viewers like me saying, "Look down in the box, look down in the box." It took them 90 seconds to look down in the box. Jonathan Capehart, along with Representative Robert Garcia, uh, real discongruity over here.
Continue to support our president and our vice president. And so it's pretty overwhelming. I think what you heard from Representative Horsford, who is a great friend, is that majority Black and brown communities are united behind the president. And we're seeing that these are communities that have a lot at stake. We're oftentimes the first to have programs cut. We know the attacks that Donald Trump is trying to make on immigrants and migrants. There is so much on the line in this November. Our attention is on defeating Donald Trump, a con man, a criminal, a traitor, and the absolute worst person to ever be president in the history of our country. It is time to move forward and defeat Donald Trump. And I'm not sure how many times Joe Biden needs to say that he's in this race to win it. He's running. He said it once. He said it twice. He continues to say it. Let's get behind our nominee, Joe Biden.
Now, I hear you, and you're saying that the caucus is united, folks are united, and yet during that call with the Hispanic caucus that the president had, Congressman Mike Levin of California urged the president to drop his election bid. What was your reaction, and where do you stand? Oh, I'm sorry, Congressman Garcia. Something has happened at the Trump... Oh, we see Donald Trump there at a rally in Pennsylvania. You can see his face. There's blood coming from his ear.
Yeah, that was a little bit weird how if you could see what was going down, what was happening down in the little box, that it took them so long to stop Robert Garcia. And you could hear Jonathan Capehart when he was asking a question. I think someone was talking in his ear there, but I don't know. Took too long. It was kind of strange to hear Robert Garcia saying all that stuff while the assassination attempt was actually taking place down in the little box down on the right. Now I'm going to show you a lot more. You're going to see that not just the little box down on the right. I'm going to show you the assassination attempt and the aftermath covered by all five of the big five corporate outlets. I'm going to show you all of their news summaries, followed by two, I think, really thoughtful reactions from a couple of my favorite senators, Senator Bernie Sanders and Senator John Fetterman. But for one more dark, not political, political comedy, but in kind of the dark sense of the discongruity, or this is actually kind of ridiculous. This is from one of the worst reactions from one of my least favorite senators. This is ABC covering the reaction of Ohio Senator JD Vance, now Trump's vice presidential pick, to the events on Saturday over Martha Raddatz talking about it on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos on Sunday, describing JD Vance's reaction over here.
This morning, we've heard President Trump say he wants the country to come together, to be united, but others are directly pointing the finger at President Biden with, of course, no evidence that he incited this or had anything to do with this assassination attempt. We heard JD Vance, Senator JD Vance, who is one of the leading picks for vice president, in a tweet say, this is not just some isolated incident. The central premise of the Biden campaign is that President Donald Trump is an authoritarian fascist who must be stopped at all costs. That rhetoric led directly to President Trump's attempted assassination. Again, there is no evidence of that. We do not know the motive of that shooter at this point.
So I guess good fact checking from Martha Raddatz there, but the thing, JD Vance has made this incredible transformation to now be Trump's vice presidential pick. I actually used to like JD Vance if you go back to like my Sunday live streams, like I took a screenshot here of my Sunday live stream from February 2017. You can see here, like next to my left shoulder, do you see that book there? Between my left shoulder and the Trevor Noah book is Hillbillly Elegy by JD Vance. I actually used to have it behind me in the background. I actually read that book. I thought it was a compelling book about the problems in the Appalachians, Ohio and West Virginia, and some of the reasons that there's been such dysfunction there. And, J.D. Vance was a reasonable person once, but he was such a reasonable person that he said a whole bunch of things about Trump that would make you think he could never be his vice president. One of the favorite things that he was caught, the Vice News got screen captures of Facebook messaging he did. Here's one of this is JD Vance in February 2016, Facebook messaging. And if you look at like that last sentence down there, says, I go back and forth between thinking Trump is a cynical asshole like Nixon who wouldn't be that bad and might even prove useful, or that he's America's Hitler. America's Hitler. So it's kind of rich now for JD Vance, who, I mean, I guess he did it privately, but he did agree that Trump might be America's Hitler, to now be doing that tweet that, an authoritarian fascist who must be stopped at all costs. Well, I mean, if he's America's Hitler, shouldn't he be stopped at all costs? And by the way, down in the video description, not only under media mentioned, I have short descriptions of all the clips I'm showing, but then under sources, you can see a link to JD Vance's tweet that I showed, to the Vice News article that had that screen capture of his Facebook message with the Nixon Hitler thing. And anyway, I now that he's the vice presidential pick, maybe he can somehow reconcile. I don't know. I don't think the old JD Vance even exists anymore. He's almost a metaphor for the Republican Party. But is that political comedy? You can let me know what you think in the comments section. And now I'm going to get to the 5 news summaries, and then I'm going to show you John Fetterman and Bernie Sanders. Then I have one clip at the end as like a follow-up to the story from the last couple weeks about what happened to, is Biden going to drop out of the race? And so that's the final newsmaker clip before the bonus Cheech and Chong, the kittens clip at the end. The one thing I wanted to say about these news summaries is usually I'll show the host of the show give the news, and if then they talk to one reporter, I'll show the host and the one reporter. And like when the war in Ukraine started, and in Israel, Gaza, there would often be like multiple reporters giving reports from different places, and it gets to be like way too long if for my like juxtaposing the news summary practice here. So what I'm going to show you is just the host and the first reporter. They all had multiple reporters on this big attempted assassination story. And even doing that for NBC News Meet the Press, this is like 8 minutes, 49 seconds. Kristen Welker and their reporter, Dasha Burns. It's a very extensive report, but I don't know, in some ways I think the story's over-reported, maybe just because I've been watching so much cable news in the last 2 days, but they keep like reporting when there's like nothing new to report. And I don't know, is this overkill, this NBC News Meet the Press news summary where it's almost 9 minutes long under the standard of the host of the program and the first reporter? You can let me know what you think after we watch that clip together over here.
Good Sunday morning. The nation is waking up to a new reality after former President Donald Trump was injured in an apparent assassination attempt that left one person dead and 2 others critically injured. The suspected gunman was killed by the Secret Service. Here is the horrifying moment as it happened.
Ed, take a look at what happened.
I got you, sir. I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold on, your head is bloody.
So we gotta move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay, my shoes down. My shoes.
Watch out.
Wait.
Now, the former president posted, quote, "I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong and that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin." This video shows the body of the alleged shooter on the roof of a building just 150 yards from where Mr. Trump was speaking.
We're hearing pop, 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 pop. And then everybody's on the ground. Everybody's on the floor.
He had a rifle. We could clearly see him with a rifle. Absolutely.
If he had not moved his head at that nick of time, it could have been a lot worse.
The man beside me suffered a gunshot wound to the head, was instantly killed. I'm honestly shocked this didn't happen earlier.
I was anticipating to be another unbelievable night, but not this way.
Well, New York Times photographer Doug Mills captured the moment, what appears to be a bullet on the right side of the image passing the former president's ear. A spokesman for the Secret Service said the suspected shooter fired multiple shots toward the stage from an elevated position outside the rally venue. Overnight, former President Trump, landing in New Jersey, walked off his plane. Early this morning, the FBI, which is now leading an investigation involving the Secret Service, ATF, state and local law enforcement, identified the alleged gunman as Thomas Matthew Crooks, 20 years old, of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania.
This evening we had what we're calling an assassination attempt against our former president, Donald Trump. It's still an active crime scene. As I mentioned, we have a number of agents on scene. We also are working closely with other federal agencies, our state partners, and our local police partners as well.
President Biden was briefed on the shooting after leaving church on Saturday and spoke out, condemning political violence.
There's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this.
And this morning on the Today Show, Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson also weighed in.
We've got to turn the rhetoric down. We've got to turn the temperature down in this country. We need leaders of all parties on both sides to call that out. There's no figure in American history, at least in the modern era, maybe since Lincoln, who's been so vilified and really persecuted by media and, Hollywood elites, political figures, even the legal system.
Now, we are covering all of the angles of this developing story, and we begin with NBC News correspondent Dasha Burns, who was at the rally when the shooting happened. She joins us now from Butler, Pennsylvania. Dasha, we are also grateful that you are safe. Walk us through what happened in the very latest there.
Kristen, you and I and our colleagues, unfortunately, we've all covered shootings as part of this job. It's become a sadly familiar assignment. We race to the scene of the tragedy and the aftermath. What's far less familiar is actually witnessing the moments of the tragedy firsthand, and that's what my team and I experienced last night. I'll just tell you from our vantage point what happened. We were on the press risers, which were positioned in the center of the venue as usual, just behind the seated section of the audience. We were actually finishing up filming a stand-up as the former president began his speech. Again, all as usual. My producer, Bianca, and I started to walk down the stairs from the riser just to grab our laptops when we suddenly heard those loud cracking pops that are now so familiar from that video we've been playing over and over again of that devastating moment. We, like many of the people that we interviewed afterwards, initially thought it might be fireworks. You know, sometimes former presidents' events have pyrotechnics. But when those sounds kept going and then when Mr. Trump stopped speaking, we took cover behind some stage equipment, again, thinking it was just a precaution. And we experienced the sort of rapid roller coaster of emotion alongside the crowd. It went from a standard political event, people were cheering, buying merchandise and food, dancing to the song YMCA, which often comes on just before the former president makes his entrance. It went from that to confusion and chaos as those sounds rang out. And then fear set in when we realized that this could actually be gunshots, something we never imagined. We were still taking cover when we heard those cheers from the crowd that you can hear in the video as the former president raised his fist into the air with blood on his face and was taken to safety by Secret Service. And Kristen, in those moments, for anyone who wasn't sort of front and center, who saw people get injured, one unfortunately ultimately killed, it wasn't immediately clear to us how dangerous and deadly the situation really was. So some people in the crowd began to leave the scene, but others, they stuck around. And we got back up on the press risers, reunited with our crew, who was thankfully safe, and we began reporting live. And one thing that struck me in those moments, it was after that some people in the crowd started to come to the risers. They started to get heated with the press. And this struck me as I was thinking back to these moments, because we've been talking about sort of the division and polarization that's an inevitable part of this story, right? And this crowd gathered near the media, started blaming the press for what had just happened, some screaming at journalists and getting pretty aggressive. Of course, emotions were running high in that moment. It was a chaotic scene, and we didn't know the details at that moment. We were ultimately told to leave the scene in the middle of our live report as Secret Service told us that this was now an active crime scene. Our crew had to abandon their gear. We made our way to the parking lot where there were thousands of cars that would ultimately take hours to get out of there. There was really only one entry and exit point, and so there was a massive traffic jam. And it was sort of in that traffic jam, as everyone was coming to grips with what just happened, that we spent hours speaking to witnesses. We were exchanging our stories, hearing their stories, trying to fill in the blanks. And pretty quickly, a picture of total horror emerged as we met people who witnessed the tragic death of one attendee. A man named Joseph that I talked to was standing next to the gentleman who was killed. He told me that that man died on impact and that he helped carry the man's body away. People described watching the former president turn his head slightly to point to a screen just on stage, just as those first few bullets were getting fired. One woman telling me that potentially the lethal shot was missed by inches, maybe centimeters. And this morning, the former president gave another update, addressing supporters on Truth Social, writing, "It was God alone who prevented the unthinkable from happening. We will fear not, but instead remain resilient in our faith and defiant in the face of wickedness. In this moment, it is more important than ever that we stand united and show our true character as Americans, remaining strong and determined and not allowing evil to win." Kristen.
Dasha Burns, just extraordinary what you witnessed, and that update, of course, from former president could be a bit of a preview of what we might hear at the Republican National Convention. Dasha Burns, thank you.
Now, one thing I thought was really interesting about that you didn't hear, I don't think you hear in any of the other news summaries, although I did see it in online social media, that this story about how after Trump left, some of the crowd turned on the press. the media are up in their little enclosure back behind the crowd mostly, and a bunch of the Trump supporters went back there and started like yelling at them and making, threatening in some way. Well, you heard what Dasha Burns said, although I don't think anything came of it, but it kind of is a little bit of a, the story got reported in trying to make sort of a kumbaya moment out of it, and everyone comes together, and you'll hear that from Bernie Sanders and John Fetterman somewhat when I get there, and most people made really positive reactions. Even Donald Trump himself, you saw at the very end of Dasha Burns' program there, but they didn't really talk about the JD Vance tweet, though, and how some people are actually blaming Biden. And when they say we have to come together united, they mean like stop criticizing Donald Trump, which, that we don't want him to be the victim of an assassination attempt, but that doesn't mean we can't tell the truth about maybe he's America's Hitler, as his vice presidential candidate once mused, or maybe he's just a cynical asshole like Nixon. Those are our choices according to JD Vance. But anyway, that was I kind of got off on a tangent there. See, sometimes I lose my train of thought. I was saying this back with the Biden debate. That sometimes I forget exactly where I was going. Oh, I know where I'm going. I'm going to the next news summary, which is like 3.5 minutes shorter. I think that one was so long just because Dasha Burns was like eyewitness to history there, and Kristen Welker, after giving some introduction of her own about all the the reactions, like Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, etc., let Dasha Burns kind of go on and on. But it was, I thought it was an interesting story, but I don't know if it was worth in terms of a program that supposedly only comes once a week as focusing on the national news of the week. If that was over reporting, you can let me know what you think in the comment section as we go over to George Stephanopoulos and Rachel Scott as the first reporter reporting on the same story yesterday on This Week with George Stephanopoulos, that I'll talk about a little more after we watch it together over here.
Good morning and welcome to This Week. It's been 4 decades since an assassination attempt on an American president. Last night, that terrifying scene played out at a Donald Trump rally in western Pennsylvania. The former president hit with a bullet in the ear before being surrounded and taken away by Secret Service. The former president is safe. The suspect was killed. An innocent rally attendee was also killed. And this attack has shocked the nation, drawn condemnation from across the political spectrum, and completely upended what was already the most unusual presidential campaign of our lifetime in a deeply divided country. We are covering all the fallout this morning. We begin with Rachel Scott, who was at the rally last night. Good morning, Rachel.
George, good morning to you. We were, in fact, at the rally on the press riser, just about 100 feet away from where the former president was standing as that gunfire erupted. Trump had just taken the stage. He was less than 10 minutes into his speech when those shots were fired. It should have been a normal campaign rally by former President Donald Trump. Instead,
if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
An assassination attempt, the gunfire coming just minutes into Trump's speech. The former president grabbing his ear, ducking behind the podium. Secret Service members quickly rushing onto the stage to shield him. The crowd just feet away, running for cover as agents lift the former president to his feet.
Let me get my shoes on.
Hold on, your head is bloody.
So we got to move to the car.
The blood on Trump's face visible. As he's hurried away, the former president pumping his fists in the air. An armored SUV rushing him to a local medical center. Trump saying he was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear, but was safe, returning to New Jersey last night. Authorities say the attack killed one attendee and critically injured 2 others.
Yeah, I saw the man that was hit in the head, and there was a lot of blood, and I knew there was no way that he was going to survive that.
Law enforcement sources telling ABC News as many as 8 rounds were fired from an AR-style rifle from a gunman perched on an adjacent rooftop outside the perimeter of the event.
You see law enforcement officials right now, they're putting up this caution tape around this area. This is very much an active scene at this moment.
The FBI identifying the suspected gunman, who they say is dead, as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks. Trump posting on Truth Social this morning, "We pray for the recovery of those who were wounded and hold in our hearts the memory of the citizen who was so horribly killed. In this moment, it's more important than ever that we stand united and show our true character as Americans." President Biden addressing the nation, calling for unity.
It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this.
The White House later confirming that Biden and Trump spoke by phone, though not releasing details of the conversation. Last night's rally was slated as the last before Trump heads to Milwaukee for the Republican National Convention, where he's set to accept his 3rd Republican nomination for president and announce his pick for vice president. All 3 potentials, Ohio Senator JD Vance, Florida Senator Marco Rubio, and North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, reacting to last night's attack, as well as House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, who was shot and wounded in an attack at a congressional baseball practice back in 2017.
It's alarming to think we came this close to not having him with us. Thank God that he's okay.
In a post on social media, Trump also thanking the Secret Service for their quick actions responding to what happened just last night. In an internal memo obtained by ABC News, the Trump campaign is telling its staff to avoid its offices in Washington, D.C. and West Palm Beach, and also telling them to avoid commenting on what occurred publicly, saying they will not tolerate dangerous rhetoric, George.
And Rachel, you were there on the scene last night. It must have been a surreal and quite scary experience.
Yes, George, and to be honest with you, it's something that we are all still processing. You know, I have been to almost every single campaign rally that the former president has had this election cycle, and these are events that are typically filled with excitement of Trump supporters waiting in line for hours, waiting to see the former president. That rally, once it started, was then over within minutes. We were on the press riser, just about 100 feet away from Donald Trump as that gunfire erupted. We ourselves ducked for cover. We watched as people started shouting and yelling and screaming, just in fear and terror, confused by what happened. And typically, these events are extremely safe, George. You go through metal detectors, your bags are screened. It is almost unthinkable like something like this would happen at an event with the former president, but it certainly did just last night. And I will just say, George, there was a sense of grief and sadness from everyone just leaving that rally last night. Most people just could not even believe that this occurred just hours ago, George.
And of course, everyone thinking of the attendee who was killed and the others who were seriously injured. Rachel Scott, thanks very much.
Now, yeah, there was Rachel Scott, also eyewitness, like Dasha Burns, but ABC, I guess, kept it shorter. There was also George Stephanopoulos was shorter at the beginning, and they all had multiple reporters talking about different aspects. I think on ABC they went over to Pierre Thomas, and then they went to Martha Raddatz, that showing that JD Vance tweet that I show. That was the clip, the second clip I showed in after the Saturday show one. So I thought that was a pretty good news summary. Maybe less over-reported than NBC News Meet the Press. The next one is CNN State of the Union. Jake Tapper actually did the show live twice. You know, there's the 6 a.m. Eastern version and the 9 a.m. Eastern version. I'm going to show you the news summary from the 9 a.m. version just because it's more up to date. It's Jake Tapper and Evan Perez. Later I'll show you a clip from the 6 a.m. version. That's the John Fetterman interview. But first, here's the CNN State of the Union news summary. Jake Tapper, Evan Perez over here.
Hello, I'm Jake Tapper at the Republican National Convention here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where the state of our union is on edge. We are learning more this hour about the shocking assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump at a Pennsylvania campaign rally yesterday afternoon. Multiple sources are telling CNN that authorities found explosive materials inside the car and the residence of the shooter, 20-year-old Thomas Michael Crooks, who was killed by the U.S. Secret Service after he fired upon former President Trump. Also, crucial new information, the shooter was flagged by local law enforcement before the shooting because he was acting suspiciously around the security check outside the rally. So far, investigators have not found any initial signs, no social media or other writings that would help provide a motive for his sick and twisted act. Trump has said he was shot in the upper part of his right ear. He was examined at a hospital and released. One person attending the Butler, Pennsylvania rally was killed in the attack. 2 others remain in critical condition. Right now, law enforcement agencies are briefing President Biden in the Situation Room on all the latest, a senior White House official tells CNN. CNN's Evan Perez joins us now to break it all down. And Evan, it sounds as though this man was immediately on law enforcement's radar upon his arrival to the rally.
That's right, Jake. This shooter, his name is Thomas Matthew Crooks, 20 years old, from Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. Now, this is near Pittsburgh. It's about an hour from the venue where this the former president was holding a rally and where this shooting occurred yesterday. One of the things that we know that law enforcement is doing is trying to put together a picture of this shooter. How long has he been planning this? What was his motivation? And as you pointed out, Jake, not a lot is emerging. Certainly, he doesn't seem to have a social media footprint. We know that the company that operates Discord, this chat group online, says that he had an account. But again, not a lot of information there coming out as to what might provide an idea of his motivation. We know that according to his online registration, he was a Republican, or he registered as a Republican. But we also found that at 17 years old, he made donations to a Democratic-linked group. So again, a complicated picture of a young man who's 20 years old. What we know also is that this was an AR-15 style firearm that was used, a rifle. He was seen beforehand, Jake, near the magnetometers. The police believed that he was acting suspiciously, so they thought they were going to keep an eye on him. Apparently, they did warn this to the Secret Service. And then the next thing we know, according to witnesses, is he is seen on that rooftop, and that's when you see some of the social media. You can see and hear from some of the witnesses raising the alarms, trying to get the attention of law enforcement about the presence of this shooter on that rooftop, which is about 500 feet from where the former president was speaking. We know also that in the search after the shooting, they found explosive material in his car. They also found it at the residence. Jake, he wasn't carrying any ID, so one of the ways they were able to identify him initially was because of the firearm, which was traced back to his father. We also know that, at this stage, they're trying to go through, witnesses. They're trying to talk to his family members, his employer, all of that to try to put together a picture of how long he's been planning this attack on the former president at that rally, Jake.
All right, Evan Pettis, thanks so much. Let's go now to...
So yeah, you can see there, at least that version of CNN's State of the Union, they decided not to start with an eyewitness, although they had plenty of eyewitnesses during the program, but instead they go to Evan Perez, their reporter in the Washington, D.C. Bureau, just sitting in the bureau office, but he did accumulate a whole bunch of facts about the shooter in the assassination attempt and his activities before the rally and around the rally, his suspicious behavior and all, the explosives in his car. And so, I don't know, that's a different way to go, but maybe a better reporting on the topic, I guess, than the long eyewitness accounts. But I guess is it a preference, or is one more journalistic? You can let me know what you think, especially juxtaposing it here to the penultimate of the news summaries, CBS News Face the Nation, Margaret Brennan handing it over to Scott MacFarlane, who was an eyewitness at the rally over in this clip.
Good morning. As we come on the air this morning, the stunning events of last evening, the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump at a political rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, have shaken, angered, and scared many Americans. They've also upended an already turbulent and emotional presidential campaign. Saturday night, President Biden condemned the shooting.
There's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this.
In addition to the alleged shooter, one attendee was killed and 2 others critically injured. And we will try to get answers to the many questions we have about security for the former president, as well as the motive of the 20-year-old shooter. Our Scott MacFarlane was at that rally, along with 2 of our campaign reporters, and that is where we begin.
6 minutes after the former president took the stage in Butler, Pennsylvania yesterday evening, shots rang out.
Take a look at what happened.
Former president was quickly rushed off the stage by his Secret Service detail, blood clearly visible on his face. Shaken yet defiant, Mr. Trump raised his fist several times as he was taken from the scene, shouting, "Fight." He was taken to a nearby hospital and following his release issued a social media post saying he'd been shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of his right ear. He said he heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin. The shooter was shot and killed by Secret Service snipers from his location atop a shed outside the security perimeter, but between 150 and 300 feet from the stage where the former president stood, with dozens of supporters in stands behind him and beside him. In addition to Mr. Trump's injury, 1 man was killed and 2 critically wounded. CBS News spoke to an eyewitness who'd been seated behind the former president and said he administered CPR on the victim who died.
Somebody over there was screaming, "He's been shot, he's been shot." So I made my way over. I said, "I'm an emergency department physician. Let me help you." The guy had spun around, was jammed between the benches. He had a headshot here. There was lots of blood, and he had brain matter there.
Law enforcement has identified the shooter as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks of nearby Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, seen here accepting his high school diploma in 2022. One attendee told the BBC that he'd seen the man and notified law enforcement on the scene prior to the shooting.
We noticed the guy crawling, bear crawling up the roof of the building beside us, 50 feet away from us. So we're standing there, we're pointing at the guy crawling up the roof. We could clearly see him with a rifle, absolutely. We're pointing at him. The police are down there running around on the ground. We're like, "Hey man, there's a guy on the roof with a rifle."
The motive of the shooter is unknown and under investigation. The 20-year-old registered Republican, for somebody his age, had no large-scale social media presence. We do know an event that was supposed to be uniquely secure resulted in the wounding of a former president, the death of a rally-goer, injuries of others, and untold damage, Margaret, to the fabric of the country.
Scott MacFarlane, and we're glad that you are safe.
So yeah, that was the CBS report. Do you notice that they seem to have like different distances? That they said 150 to 300 feet. I think one of the other reports said 400 feet. I heard like 500 yards. This is from the shooter to the stage, and I've heard it reported so many different ways. It seems like that should be a fact that they should be able to get. I heard like 138 yards someone reported, which seems like really precise. So maybe that was the actual number. I don't know. I suppose it depends exactly on from what point to what point you measure, but that's one of the things that you'll see some discrepancies in the news summaries. And then I'm going to finish off with the shortest of the news summaries. This is the news summary from Shannon Bream and their reporter Alexis McAdams on Fox News Sunday to juxtapose with the other 4 actual journalistic outlets Here's the Republican propaganda outlet reporting over here.
Hello from inside Milwaukee's Fiserv Forum. On the eve of the Republican National Convention, the nation reeling from the news of the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, bringing back memories of the string of political events the country suffered in the 1960s, including John and Robert F. Kennedy's assassinations, the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan in the early 80s. Leaders from around the world condemning last night's attack, offering their prayers and support. We've got extensive team coverage with Alexis McAdams, who was at the scene of the shooting in Butler County, Pennsylvania, David Spun, who has the latest on the massive investigations now underway, and Edward Lawrence with reaction from President Biden. He's at the White House. But Alexis, we begin with you in Pennsylvania.
Hi, Shannon. Well, we were talking with you just seconds before former President Trump took the stage in Butler, Pennsylvania. It was an exciting atmosphere. People were waiting for hours for Trump to get up on that stage. He was speaking for only a few minutes, and we were pretty close. But all of a sudden, Shannon, you heard several pops that sounded like gunfire, which we now know exactly that's what it was, fired from a nearby rooftop. People then taking cover, including the former president, who then formerly then came back up and had blood on his ear. People in the crowd screaming and running for cover. And again this morning, Shannon, people replaying that over and over again. Watch.
Something that said, take a look at what happened.
You can hear those gunshots there, Shannon. Police telling us that 3 men in the crowd were shot. One of those men was killed. He was just here with his family at that rally in Butler. Witnesses tell me his family was screaming for help after he was gunned down. People were shocked. Listen.
People started screaming, and we all started hitting the ground. And just looking around, the Secret Service members were all firing back towards the AGR building. There was maybe 6, 7 shots. And then looking up in the bleachers, there was a guy administering CPR. There's blood all over everybody around.
It was absolutely frightening. I don't ever want to go through that again. I felt really scared for him at first, especially when he stood up and I saw the blood.
This video shows the gunman up on that nearby rooftop we're talking about. The FBI has now identified the shooter as Thomas Matthew Crooks of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. That's just about 45-minute drive from where we are right now. The shooter was up on that roof, we're told, for a very short time before he fired that weapon. The 20-year-old Shannon was a registered Republican, according to state voting records. Police tell us Crooks was able to get up on that rooftop just about 200 yards or like 2 football fields away from that stage where the former president was speaking. Then a U.S. Secret Service counter sniper took him out. Investigators haven't said what his motive was yet.
Really, at this point, we're not going to make that assessment. There's an active investigation. A lot of things need to occur investigatively to make those determinations of what, if any, failures there were.
But still a lot of questions. You can see that AGR building shortly here behind me, Shannon. That's where the gunman was up on that roof near the stage. This morning, Trump posting on social media saying it was God alone that prevented the unthinkable from happening, thanking everyone in America for their prayers and calling on people to stand united at this time. Also praying for the man who lost his life and those who were wounded, Shannon.
All right, Alexis McAdams reporting around the clock from Butler County. Thank you very much, Alexis. Joining us now, Fox News.
And Fox News had a couple more reporters there, so some of the stuff they left out was covered by the other reporters. They also chose to go with Alexis McAdams being an eyewitness for the 5 news outlets started their programs. I can't remember if State of the Union in the earlier version started with an eyewitness. I'd have to go back and look. But did you notice Alexis McAdams said 200 yards, so that would be 600 feet. 150 to 300 was on one of them. 400 feet was on it. I don't know why it makes you a little suspicious about the news when, they're like actual facts. There's got to be like a right answer there, maybe slightly, maybe a few feet off, depending on like whether you're measuring from like the corner to the corner or whatever. But I don't know why the news summaries can't seem to agree on how far away that was. But those are the news summaries. You can let me know who you think did it best, which Eyewitness gave the best eyewitness account from all those reporters, or CNN with all the facts about the shooter, the attempted assassin. Now I have just 3 more newsmaker clips to show you. Well, there are actually really only 2 newsmaker clips. The 2 Democratic senators I promised to show you, Bernie Sanders and John Fetterman. After that, I have some reporters, CBS reporters, following up on last week's story, like how does this Trump assassination attempt affect the people calling for Biden to drop out? And you have like 2 different reporters who disagree. So that'll be the final clip I show you. But first I want to show you Bernie Sanders and John Fetterman. Bernie Sanders is talking to Kristen Welker on NBC News' Meet the Press, and I don't know, in some ways her job is to like not be boring and to like get views for her program. But I guess we can forgive her for going with Bernie Sanders' argument for the boring, which is, I don't know, I kind of like that idea that, well, I'll talk about it. You don't even know what I'm talking about, so let's watch Bernie Sanders talk about it with Kristen Welker from NBC News' Meet the Press yesterday together over here.
I'm wondering if you can give us your reaction to the events that unfolded in Pennsylvania yesterday, and what you think needs to happen in this country to prevent this horrific, completely unacceptable act of political violence from ever happening again.
Well, Kristen, thanks very much for allowing me to be with you today. For a start, I think everybody in this country, no matter what their political views are, wishes former President Trump a rapid and speedy recovery, mourns the loss of innocent lives and those who are wounded, and understands that political violence of any kind or shape or form is unacceptable, it is un-American, and we've got to put an end to it. I think in this traumatic moment, it's time for all of us to take a deep breath. Remember what this country is about and what political campaigns are about. And they're about serious discussions of serious ideas as to how we address these serious problems facing this country. So let's use this moment. If there's any silver lining in this tragedy, it's to figure out how we go forward peacefully, constructively, and intelligently.
Absolutely, Senator. And you obviously have been impacted by political violence yourself in 2017. That horrible moment when Republican Congressman Steve Scalise was shot at baseball practice. You came out and forcefully denounced what had happened upon learning that the suspected shooter had been a volunteer for your campaign. How does that experience inform how you think the country can move forward right now?
Well, let me also say that a couple of months ago, my office right here in Burlington, Vermont, with 7, I was not there at the moment, but there were 7 staff members there, was almost burned down by somebody who's in jail right now. 7 people could have been burned alive. So yeah, I am familiar with political violence in all its forms. The bottom line is what we need as a nation, what a democracy is about, is not radical rhetoric. What it is about is a serious discussion of where we are as a nation and how we go forward. You know, in a certain way, Kristen, politics should be kind of boring. You know, our healthcare system is dysfunctional. How do we fix it? Well, it's kind of a boring discussion. But we need a healthcare system that guarantees healthcare to all people. We have massive income and wealth inequality. Well, maybe a boring discussion. Should 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half of American society? So I think what we have got to see is serious discussion of serious issues and not this kind of harsh rhetoric that we have heard for the last number of years.
Senator, you know, before all of this had happened, I invited you to come on to talk about your op-ed, your perspective on the 2024 campaign. Obviously, there has been a lot of discussion about whether President Biden should pass the torch, whether he should be the standard bearer. In your op-ed, you say enough of all of that discussion. You say it's time to put the divisions, quite frankly, to rest about whether President Biden should be the nominee. I wonder if you think this moment will impact that debate, and if so, how?
No, I don't. Look, I don't. I mean, I think President Biden is the strongest candidate the Democrats have. I think he has a very, very effective record that he can run on. We are finally lowering the cost of prescription drugs. We are rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure. Finally, we're beginning to deal with the existential threat of climate change. We're trying to do our best to protect a woman's right to control her own body. It's a strong record. But what I have been critical of, and I'm seeing good things, I thought President Biden's speech on Friday night was really good. And I think he talked about what he wants to do with a Democratic Congress in the first 100 days of his administration. And, you know, when he talks about expanding Social Security, Kristen, you know, we have half of our seniors in this country are living on less than $30,000 a year. We got to improve benefits, and we do that by lifting the cap. You got millions of seniors who can't afford to go to a dentist. We have to expand Medicare to include dental, hearing, and vision. Workers who want to join a union, unable to do that. We have to pass the PRO Act. We have to raise this minimum wage, which is now $7.25 an hour, to a living wage. That's what he talked about. And I think if he continues to talk about that, I think he gets reelected.
All right, Senator Sanders, you said something significant today, that our politics, is your hope, should be boring again. Here's to that happening. I think everyone, no matter what their political perspectives, can agree to that this morning. Right. Senator Sanders, thank you very much for your perspective. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.
So yeah, it's kind of the opposite of that. What I guess I've heard was a Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times or whatever. May your news be boring is a more positive thing. Well, you would think not if you're a news person like Kristen Welker. Also, speaking of boring, I think there's like 80% of the Bernie Sanders clips I show. At one point, he's like, no, he's so on message. Because this is such a vote getter for Democrats with a high propensity voting population. Medicare should include vision, dental, and hearing. Vision, dental, and hearing. Medicare should include vision, dental, and hearing. That's the way to get people, a lot of people who are in need of coverage that they, because they can't afford vision, dental, and hearing, and they're retired. And that's a great message that totally off topic, but I think like almost, maybe not every time, but almost every time I take a clip of Bernie Sanders, or he gives an interview, maybe I cut that part out, but there's somewhere in there, Medicare must include vision, dental, hearing. I just, I wish that was the boring topic we were talking about, like Bernie Sanders said. And anyway, the other clip that I thought was notable, this is from CNN State of the Union, and Jake Tapper didn't really follow up on this at all. I'm not exactly sure why, but John Fetterman did this little jujitsu move where he's doing the same thing that all the, the decent politicians, if they're, I mean, is decent politician an oxymoron? Well, the ones who want to look decent at least are all like calling for like lowering the political temperature and, political violence unacceptable. And, that's true. There's nothing wrong with that. But what he does here is he loops it into it. It's not just saying bad things about Donald Trump, which seems to be what Republicans mean when they say the lowering the political temperature. And that's what causes political violence is, saying true but unflattering things about Donald Trump. Well, what John Fetterman does is he loops in where he was on his way back from a funeral service. You almost don't hear it here, especially his second reference is kind of hard to pick up at the end of this clip. That's why I'm playing this almost 6-minute clip. He was coming back from a funeral for someone who was killed for being trans, and that's also political violence. And John Fetterman loops that into this discussion, also saying all the right things about not wanting any harm to come to Donald Trump, and also weirdly enough saying this is not a time to be political, but he kind of is being political by looping in that trans funeral into his argument. And as far as I can tell, Jake Tapper didn't pick up on it at all, and I've definitely pre-criticized this clip which I will talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
What's your reaction to what we saw in Pennsylvania last night, the attempted assassination of former President Trump?
Well, it's shocking, and it's a dark day for our nation. Absolutely. I mean, I was stunned. I was actually close by that at the time, and sadly, I was actually in that region to attend a vigil for a trans teen that was murdered there, and it was just a very sad night. And then, of course, I immediately was like, I'm just so glad that Donald Trump is going to be okay, and my heart goes out to people that have lost their lives. And all of that. And it isn't about politics or anything other than just condemn in the strongest kinds of terms about this kinds of violence and where we are at.
Yeah, you know this part of Pennsylvania very well. The shooting happened about an hour north of where you live. What are you hearing from federal, state, and local law enforcement, if anything?
And nothing specific or anything like that, But I just would like to remind that for me, this isn't about an opportunity for politics or strategy or how this might play out or the visuals or anything like that. You know, this was an incredibly dark day for Pennsylvania, but for our nation as well, too. I can't believe that we're actually in that place. And it's that same kind of a shock. I mean, I was in a campaign back in 2018 when the Tree of Life, where this kind of shock and this kind of violence. And my instinct was seriously like, hey, this isn't about politics, and suspending that kind of traditional politics and just condemn the kind of tragedy that what happened here today. And just so sad that this is the kind of place where we could be at in our nation.
Obviously, the fault of what happened is the shooters and the shooters alone. An assassination attempt on a former president, one innocent person killed, 2 people wounded. But beyond that, this was obviously a security failure, whether it was the police or the U.S. Secret Service. Obviously, that roof should not have been a place where somebody with a rifle should have been able to go, only 500 yards away from where the former president was. Do you think Congress needs to investigate what went so wrong here?
Well, of course that might be necessary to find out if there was any kinds of security failures or anything. But that answer we have to be investigated. But we can't forget is that we can't assume that these kind of things can't happen again, and we just have to turn down the temperature on this election is going to be the biggest kind of election in our lifetime, and we have months ahead of us. So much more can happen, but I just want to remind us for this week, I just am now more focusing on the tragedy that what happened here. And I'm not going to make it about politics where it is. And I'm just grateful that the former president now is making a full recovery, and so sad for anyone that was killed. And I hope that the 2 people that have been critically injured are able to be okay.
For those who haven't been following your career as closely as Pennsylvanians like myself have, you have 9 dates tattooed on your arm. Those dates commemorate the violent deaths that happened in Braddock, Pennsylvania, when you were the mayor. So the idea of violence and gun violence are part of you and who you are and your career and trying to rid this nation of this epidemic. And I just wonder what goes through your mind when you see yet another horrific incident of violence like this in Pennsylvania.
It's just heartbreaking again, and what you're referencing, yeah, they're there. No, it is, and violence, whether it happens because of a gun or because a child was beaten to death because of how she identified and all that, and it's just heartbreaking. I mean, my drive back home last night from northwestern Pennsylvania was I was just incredibly sad. And I wasn't in. I just can't believe that this is the place where our nation is there, and because we have this election coming up, it's hard to really understand. And here we were, I guess, some the Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, and that could have been how this could have been a couple inches more, how that could have happened in there. I'm just so grateful that former President Trump is okay. Again, being right there and seeing what's happened, it's something that we have to process on this. And I don't think politics or blame or that kinds of who or this or that. This is just needing for all of us to turn down any kind of the temperature and just be grateful that fewer kinds of people have lost their lives. And now we can't remember that all the kinds of countless events that are going to be part of this gigantic election, that we have to make sure that this can never happen again.
Yeah. Senator John Fetterman from the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
So, yeah. Oh, here I've got Cheech the kitten who joined me to watch that clip and see the sort of political jujitsu that John Fetterman employed there. It wasn't a funeral, it was a vigil for this trans teen murdered for just how she identified, which John Fetterman looped into his condemnation of political violence, which was something that I thought was worthwhile and probably not what the Republicans mean when they're talking about the issue. Here, let me put Cheech down here and get to my final clip, which is arguing two reporters from CBS News' Face the Nation, which, by the way, down in the video description, if you click under sources on the Face the Nation link, it goes to their YouTube channel where they have the entire Face the Nation episode uploaded for free. I also have a link down there to the full NBC News Meet the Press program, though I already showed you like almost 9 minutes of it, but I did criticize it, so it is fair use, but normally I don't take clips that big, but I explained why. Anyway, don't want to go off on a big tangent. Anyway, that's what Biden always says when he's like about to like make a mistake or go off on a tangent or wants to get back on topic. I've been watching him recently, and I saw that he has a interview with Lester Holt, NBC, that is going to be airing in like 10 minutes where I live. So anyway, I'm getting back to my dueling reporters from CBS News' Face the Nation, talking to Margaret Brennan, the host. It's Ed O'Keefe and Robert Costa, who've heard different things about how this Trump assassination attempt is going to affect last week's topic, Democrats calling for Biden to drop out, which I'll talk about a little more after we watch that final newsmaker clip together over here.
You said suspension. You were just talking about the pulling of ads. Are you indicating that Joe Biden is changing other plans for the week ahead?
Not at this point, Margaret, we don't know. The other element of all this, of course, is his own political future. As we've reported, just an hour before this incident, before the president was going to his Saturday night mass in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, just before the former president was shot in Pennsylvania, he was in the midst of what's been described to us as a defensive, angry call with dozens of House Democratic lawmakers raising concerns about his political prospects. He was defensive, we're told, in that conversation. And while the conversation about his future may be suspended for now, in the words of one lawmaker, it may resume again if he, quote, has another episode.
Though I've been speaking...
Go ahead. We just have to wrap quickly.
Yeah, very quickly. I've been speaking with some top Democrats. They believe that those Democrats who have the concerns about President Biden are now standing down politically, will back President Biden because of this fragile political moment. All of that talk about the debate faded almost instantly among my top Democratic sources as this unfolded. Say it's time for the country to stick together, and that means Democrats sticking together as well.
And anything can happen in an instant. Bob, Ed, thank you.
Yep. I saw some live comments that there was something wrong with my mic, but you can hear me now, right? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Did I cut out or something? Did some part of what I said before the last clip? Could you not hear me? Because it looks to me like my sound is working. So anyway, I hope it is. And that you saw there that Ed O'Keefe seemed to be saying that maybe the Democrats who were wanting Biden to drop out are just waiting a little while, but Robert Costa has heard that no, we're all unifying in the face of the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, and unifying means unifying behind Biden too, I guess. I don't know. What whether that's going to come back up. I mean, all the way up until the Democratic convention. That's basically the drop dead date on. I mean, not literally, of course, maybe a poor choice of words, but that's what I was about to say. No, I mean the deadline. Wait, sorry, but no, the basically for it to really work, it's got to happen by the Democratic convention, which is next month. So there's still time for that. For this, who know? I don't know how long this news cycle about the Trump assassination, and now the Republican convention and the vice president, the iconic image, that was how long that's going to last. I mean, one thing, the last thing kind of like this was the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan. And I did see someone say he went up like 20 points in approval after the assassination attempt. And that lasted a couple months, though. So there's still almost 4 months till the election. But so far, there's nothing really shifting the momentum in Biden's favor, and multiple things shifting the momentum more in Trump's favor in the last few weeks. But kind of like Margaret Brennan said at the end of that last clip, anything can happen in an instant, and there's still time. I guess that's the most positive thing I can say at this point in time, other than to say, oh, there's also a bonus Cheech and Chong the kitten clip. You got a live look at Cheech, who came to watch the show briefly. I was trying to get a good clip. I did get some extreme close-ups, but not a lot of good kitten action in this brief clip from earlier today over here. And that's the program. That is the clips I picked out from. It was a weird set of news programs because continually updating, breaking story, over reporting the news. I didn't have like 5 newsmaker clips like I usually do, but that it was just a weird news weekend. I don't know, maybe we're just in for a weird few months. I guess we'll see, but I have no idea what the topic's going to be next week, but I will be back next Monday and every Monday through the inauguration of whoever gets inaugurated in 2025, and maybe I'll have some other reason to upload a video. There's something I'm doing on Tuesday, like a public well, no, I probably won't upload that, but I have other stuff, like local activism stuff I'm doing this week that, well, maybe I'll have a chance to upload some other video. Otherwise, I'll just see you next Monday, every Monday for the next, how many months is it now till January? It's, 6 months? For another 6 months. And anyway, enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy watching the Republican convention, the Biden interview with Lester Holt on NBC, and until I have some other reason to upload a video, or until next Monday, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.